If you have seen the yearly sale for this series, it's really amazing. Aside from the movie boosting the sale, it's still tremendous how well it has keep up in the top 5 for such a long period of time. Let's hope for next year it remains stable and strong. As much as fans are hungry for Shin vs Houken, it wouldn't hurt to pause for a moment and explore the inner depth of a character, someone who has yet to share with anyone until now. It may upset some fans, but I believe it will pay off greatly. If this is truly the sign for the endgame, then by all means, give us the backstory of the Bushin. The backstory of Houken has been hinted for a while. There were clear indications within this day of battle with him appearing without a call, and Riboko's cryptic messages, including the last chapter, calling him mankind's representative. Apparently, he really meant by those words, as absurd that may sound. There's more to come to truly understand the title. To begin the origin, Riboko makes room to explain the story, starting with his first encounter. In a way, this would technically be his backstory as well. It took place around 19 years ago, before Kayane met him for the first time. Unlike today, he wasn't all that magnificent. In fact, you can argue he's a polar opposite. Even his appearance, disregarding on the age, was different, more of a fighter than a thinker. Back then, he thought of himself as a fool who charged headfirst to battle, recklessly costing his men's lives. He was on a verge to death, but ready to accept the consequence of his action. His life changed when he met his destiny. Houken appeared out of nowhere, carrying a tiger's head. It's just a normal day for him. I like how Hara-sensei illustrates him as a monster, whether it's due to his behemoth size or the camera shot that angle him as a terrifying creature. Even the close-up shot to his bleeding hand carrying the glaive oozes a monstrous aura. All Riboko thought was how strange it was for him to witness an inhuman man before his end. That speaks on how low he was at the time. Upon his encounter, Houken was prepared to kill him, even though that would do more good than harm. Riboko was so defeated, he didn't care if he were to die by a monster. He has lost everything in a war. Ending him would end his misery. It's a bit surreal to see him falling this low, though I got a feeling we will see it once more when this war ends. Maybe not to this extent, but something similar. You would think it was Riboko that gave a reason to work together, but Houken was unusually portrayed as a philosopher, gave him a reason to live. Instead of killing him, he granted him a chance to recover, because he thought of him as someone that would guide him. That's unusually noble of him. It's almost like a different character. He enlightened him that the voices of Earth led him to this destined meeting. In other words, it's destiny. All it was missing was him saying, "I have spoken." I could settle with him proclaiming as a peace-seeker. Once Riboko woke up from recovery, he stepped on the bloody soil, realizing his enemies were annihilated by Houken. No wonder Riboko always have him on dial. I find the meeting interesting. This explains why Riboko's foundation in battle drastically changed from charging like a wild man to playing with strategic mindset. The way I see it, he was once like Shin, only life wasn't favored to him. There's no wonder when he and Shin exchanged attacks way back then, Shin picked up that he had experiences in battle. He did fight on the battlefield, but the fact he lost everything, it pissed him off for that bitter reminder. I find it neat that he wasn't a prodigy at start. He was a simple man that had to learn the hard way. It's relatable in a sense. His encounter with Houken was also interesting. I thought it would be him that persuaded Houken to work together, but it's reverse. I'm used to Houken to be a wild animal that hardly can be reasoned with. The fact he spoke with enlightenment was kinda surprising. I know he has said deep words before, including recently against Kyokai, but one that spoke about life and guidance didn't feel like his fortitude. with the explanation of Rebiko and his upbringing out of the way, this is where it gets a bit complicated. The one part that stood out from the story is Houken's title, Pathseeker. As it implies, it's a group that seeks a path, the salvation of humanity. After Rebiko recovered, he took a time off from the military and researched on Houken and the Pathseekers. According to him, the Pathseekers have been around over 5 centuries, predated before their time of era. I am reminded that the series does hold some elements of supernatural entity or factions, so this shouldn't feel as distant to its nature. They were disheartened by the foolish nature of endless warfare, thus they gathered together. Unfortunately, the path for an answer was defined as futile, and so long as one man held beliefs that defer another, a conflict will be born. To make matter worse, so long as man continued to possess his passions or emotions, the world of suffering would never change. Translation: peace is impossible. This truly speaks for us, let alone the theme of this series. By this logic, the only way for peace is wiping out humanity altogether. Of course, this won't go that deep, but it did transpire for the Pathseekers to choose the only way to settle the matter. Realizing humanity is doomed with endless warfare, they chose the path that would contradict their old method. When you look at Houken's action, it definitely exposed that notion. Their solution was for everyone to transform into an existence that transcends humanity. They vanished from society, working on the chosen path. The major first step was to become an example to everyone. When it all comes down to it, the goal is to present themselves to the heavens that they have transcended humanity. So in a twisted way, Houken wasn't fighting to show everyone that he's the strongest, but rather prove a point that this is the way to save mankind. The idea is that they strive for the goal with contradiction. It's basically fight fire with fire, or in this case, beat a man to beat the man. It's absurd, and Rebiko is very aware of it. I don't believe Hara-sensei justifying Houken's action as a saint, but more like justifying his motive. It's twisted without a doubt, but fans must keep in mind that the theme always revolves with justification. What is the right path to peace? What needs to be done to change the country? We have seen conflicts from many grounds, hence why this war is even happening in the first place. This time, it's Houken's turn to provide his reason to fight. I understand why the Pathseekers chose this path, so to say, and make an example to the world. But much like forcing people to choose one side, it can never be done. Zhao sided with him because he brought victories and glories to their home. Plus, he's with Rebiko, who is basically the brain of the two, so it is a stable condition. Now that they learned the true motivation, their view changed drastically. I don't understand the idea of Kaine and others crying with left eye only though. Was it done supernaturally? If so, why? Perhaps it's a symbolic way to show the grief of Houken through their tears. That's the story of Houken, the man who is set path of becoming martial god, a Bushin. I should comment on the storytelling, for it was addressed really well. I couldn't do justice here with the summary and intakes, but Rebiko as the narrator made the story extraordinary. The paneling with its emphasis complement well with text, creating deep meanings. He does have ways with words. Just look how he concluded the story. He made Houken's image as the most valuable player of all time. This was an interesting chapter. I enjoyed the backstory of Rebiko and Houken with solid storytelling and presentation. The details on the Pathseekers were interesting. I don't know if they are based on historical fact. Should I expect of them in the near future? It did add depth to Houken's character, in which also favored the theme, searching for the right cause. Everyone has a reason. It did explain why he felt challenged with Oki, denying his belief. I know this chapter won't be suited for some, with Houken hate and all, but I believe the payoff will be very satisfying in due time. And that will do it for the review. I hope you enjoyed this one. I doubt Houken will die before the new year. I believe he will die early next year. And when that time comes, it's going to be one brand new year. What do you think of this chapter? Share your thoughts in the comment section. If you like this and want more of this, subscribe to my channel and my world will be yours to stay. Until next time, take care.